If you haven't been paying attention to the NBA over the last few years, the play-in tournament most likely feels very confusing and somewhat weird. And even for the hardcore NBA fans, there could still be some confusion.
America,
Okay,
loser, loser,
so here's what's going to happen.
loser.
You're not explaining the
I
format.
am explaining the two top losers.
Very simply, the play-in tournament is a 3-day-long mini tournament right before the playoffs. And I'll go ahead and explain this play-in tournament in simple details, and I'll show you how that connects with the playoffs in this video. First, let's zoom out to see the bigger picture of the NBA year so we're all on the same page. If you remember, the entire NBA league's 30 teams is divided into groups of teams in Western and Eastern conferences, and the NBA season starts from October to around mid-April. And over this season, all the teams battle it out for their playoff spots to go into the playoffs to compete for the NBA championship. But only up until a few years ago, the NBA added a new play-in tournament, which is a tournament in between the season and playoffs. And if you're lost in all this play-in sauce, I'll go ahead and dive into the details by breaking it down into simple questions and answers. And also at the end of this video, since right now it's April 18th and we're in the middle of the NBA play-in tournament, and I'll show you how exactly the teams are playing against each other to land in the playoffs. First question, what is the play-in tournament? The play-in tournament is a 3-day-long tournament, and for this year, it starts on Tuesday, April 16th to Friday, April 19th. And this happens right after the regular season ends, and it finishes before the start of the playoffs, which starts on April 20th. This play-in tournament is meant for the 4 teams in each conference who place 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th in the season. The name play-in comes from the 7th to 10th seeded teams from each conference where they have to play in to secure their spots in the playoffs. And unlike the top 6 teams who secured their spots in the playoffs, these 7th through 10th place teams cannot rely on their record from the season at this point. They must play in this single elimination tournament in order to secure their spot in the playoffs. A good motto for this tournament is win to get in. Question 2, how does the play-in tournament work? In my opinion, it's easier and better to remember that the top 6 teams in the Western Conference and the top 6 teams in the Eastern Conference have already secured their playoff spots after the season. After the top 6 teams in each conference have secured their spots in the playoffs, next, the play-in tournament starts for the numbers 7, 8, 9, and 10th seeded teams in each conference to go and then play against each other in a single elimination mini tournament. And the winners from the play-in tournament will get a spot in the 7th and 8th seed of the playoffs in each conference. There's a misconception that the play-in tournament is basically the NFL's version of a wild card. That is not entirely true because in the NFL, the wild card round is part of the playoffs and the loser is always eliminated. The play-in tournament is an entire separate thing from the season and playoffs. It is meant for the 6th through 10th seeded teams in each conference to secure their spots in the playoffs. And I'll show you how the play-in tournament brackets are formed when we show the example of this year's NBA play-in tournament. Number 3, what are the pros and cons of having this tournament in place now? I think there's a lot of pros to it, but there are some cons. The first pro is that there will be more games that are high pressure and very intense for teams who want to still make it into the playoffs. The second pro is that it allows more playtime for players to shine on the courts. And the third pro is that it allows one more week of rest and planning for the teams who are already secured in the playoffs. And number 4, it gives a chance for teams who are on the fringe of not making the playoffs a better chance at making the playoffs. And we can get interesting stories just like how the Heat in the 2022 and 2023 season was not supposed to make the playoffs. But because they were given a second chance to make it into the playoffs through this play-in tournament, they won their games in the play-in tournament and secured their spot as the 8th seed in the NBA playoffs. And then we saw them defeat the number 1 ranked team, the Bucks, and they eventually made it to the finals. It's literally the toughest road you can take in the playoffs to make it to the finals. And they were the second team in all of NBA history to reach the finals as the number 8th seed. I can only find one con of having this play-in tournament, but if you have any reasons why the play-in tournament should not exist, please leave in the comments below. And the one con I found is that the 7th seed, which would normally be a guaranteed spot before the play-in tournaments were in effect, this number 17 will still have to compete for a spot in the playoffs, which could seem unfair for the fans of the 7th seeded team. And when the play-in tournaments was first announced in the 2020 season, Mark Cuban was very outspoken and said that they made an enormous mistake. But only recently he changed his mind and said, I think it's good for the NBA financially and interest-wise. Having more teams in the playoff hunt creates more fan interest in the end of the season games that might not have been as appealing to some in the previous years. This works out well for the NBA from a financial standpoint as it tries to recoup some of the money lost last year due to COVID-19. Now I'll show you what's going on in the NBA play-in tournament as of today, April 18th, with the live results to show you as a live example of what's going on in the seedings this week. So here's the play-in tournament at the whole bracket level, and this is as of Thursday, April 19th. First, if you look at the middle, these are the guaranteed spots. The top 6 in each conference are already secured in here. And after the top 6 teams in each conference secure their spot in the playoffs, the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th teams of each conference enter their own tournament separately from the playoffs. And this happens with the East and West. And these teams here basically fight it out for the 7th and 8th seed in the playoffs. And since we're still in the middle of the play-in tournament, I'll show you how some of these teams entered the playoffs to secure their spots. The first match that we see in the play-in tournament will be the 9th and 10th seeded team. They play against each other, and the winner goes into the next match in the play-in tournament. The loser goes home. And so far in this case, the Sacramento Kings defeated the Warriors just the other day, so the Kings make it in, and the Warriors are done for the year. After that match, the 7th and 8th team play against each other, and the winner of that match goes and secures the 7th spot in the playoffs. And the winner of this match goes into the 8th seed where they play against OKC in the first round. Now we're going to take a look at the Eastern Conference and do the same thing. The 9th and 10th seed play against each other, and the winner moves on into the tournament and the loser goes home. In this case, the Bulls defeated the Hawks and the Bulls stay in this tournament. After this match, we have the 76ers versus the Heat, and the winner of this match was the 76ers just the other day, and by winning that match, they secured the 7th place spot in the Eastern playoffs. And since the Heats lost against the 76ers, they're set up to play against the Bulls who won their previous match earlier. I know it looks confusing because there's 9th and 10th spots up here and the 7th and 8th spots here. It's only because it's how the brackets are formed to give the team with the higher seed a second chance at making the playoffs. And when this video is uploaded on Thursday, we have the Heat versus the Bulls on standby, which starts Friday. And then we also have the Sacramento Kings versus the Pelicans also playing at the same day too. And the winner of these two matches go in as the 8th seeded team in the playoffs. And obviously the loser goes home. So win to get in, and if you lose, you go home. Hopefully this gives a better idea of how the play-in tournament works. I know it's very confusing because when I first saw this, I was so lost. I saw arrows going up and down when all I know in sports and playoffs is that it should go left and right into the middle for the grand finals. But it's a little bit different now, so hopefully this makes sense. I'll clear up all the arrows. So the play-in tournament, these things on the side here, is just meant for the teams on the fringe, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th seed to compete for the 7th and 8th spots in their conference playoffs. Feel free to rewatch this if there's any part that's confusing. Just remember that the top 6 teams in each conference secured their spots already in the playoffs. Now, after that season is over to determine the top 6 teams, the remaining 7, 8, 9, 10th seeded teams will compete for the final 2 spots in the playoffs. The whole play-in tournament is only for the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th seeded teams to have them fight it out to secure their spot in the playoffs. Everything else is back to normal. And also, if you're new here, welcome in. My name is Cooper. We do a lot of videos on the brand new NBA mobile game called NBA Infinite. It is the official NBA licensed new free mobile game for your iOS and Android devices. You can play 1v1, 3v3, or 5v5 with your friends just on your phone. You can download for free by searching NBA Infinite in your app store or using the link in the description box below. Have a great one, guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.
Create your NBA legacy with infinite ways to play. Skills challenges, three-point contests, and the ability to compete against your friends in real time.
Oh, he hijacked that shot. What a block.
Make it rain, break ankles, and dominate the competition however you decide.
Yes, yes.
Towns grabs the rebound, takes the three, and it's good.
Now that's how you make a shot.
With NBA Infinite, you call the shots. Download NBA Infinite for free from the App Store and Google Play Store.